Do they know? They remember you?
Good evening. My name is Sharon Griffin, and I want to take this opportunity to first of all thank everybody for coming out this evening. We would also like to ask those of you that are sitting in the far back, if you could move down front quickly. We want to go ahead and start our program, but before we do that, I'm going to introduce Principal Bush, who will come after me. But I just want to give a quick shout out to Douglas High School, because we just received data a couple of weeks ago, and Douglas High School had a composite score of a 5. The highest number that you could get. So we're excited, and I'm super excited because it's an Alamo school. So I want to introduce now Principal Bush, who has been the principal here at Douglas High. He was appointed last year in July, and he's doing a fabulous job. So let's give a round of applause for Principal Bush.
Thank you. And welcome to Douglas High School. I hope that you all have had a chance to look at this beautiful building. It's an honor to host this event. Commissioner McQueen is going to come and introduce her new federal law. So we're not going to talk too much because we really want to get started with this town hall meeting. We want to respect your time. Hope that you all are able to join in and ask some meaningful questions about this new law and what it means to Tennessee. So what I'd like to do is introduce one of our very own, the 2015 Teacher of the Year, Mr. Karen Bogerson.
Thank you. I've never been to Douglas High School before, and I walked in the wrong door when I first got here, and I'm so glad I walked in the right door because this is an amazing, beautiful school. So thank you for hosting it and allowing us to be here. I'm Karen Vogelsang. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Winridge Elementary for Shelby County Schools, and I'm also privileged to serve on Governor Hadson's Teachers Cabinet, and I have one of my fellow cabinet members here with me. It's a pleasure to kick off our evening with conversation and feedback tonight, because I truly do believe that teacher voice does matter to the Department of Education, and it is being heard because we're working together to make a difference in the lives of our students. This is demonstrated every day by how the department has engaged with multiple thought partners and has listened to the voices of teachers in the creation and the revision of Tennessee Succeeds. It's Tennessee's ambitious strategic plan focused on making the future better for all of our students. It's also demonstrated in something new that the department is doing this year. They've created a parent advisory council, and this parent advisory council is giving parents the opportunity to share their voices. But it's also really important that we're here tonight because you're going to have an opportunity to provide feedback, because you are also part of the amazing story of the success that Tennessee is experiencing. We are the fastest improving state in the nation. We have been able to increase the graduation rate for the past 4 years for our students. We've had an opportunity to see more students earn college credit early. We've seen more students graduate from college, graduate from high school, and go on to college. And we've also seen, now I forgot where I am. That's not good. he's on the right path. But I want to tell you, more importantly, why I'm personally glad to be here. Every day, I've had an opportunity in my classroom to see how my students have improved over the last few years with our new, more rigorous standards. I've seen a little boy named Angelo come to my classroom 2 years ago, and I was privileged to loop with him from the 3rd to the 4th grade. And when Angelo came to my class in the 3rd grade, he was below grade level in both reading and math. But I also had another challenge. My other challenge with Angelo is he was not a very motivated student. In fact, he dragged his backpack every morning as he came into class. Behind him, like Linus drags his blanket. So I really had my work cut out for me. But it didn't take too long for me to find out that Angelo was really good in math. Angelo just didn't know he was good in math. I truly believe that the combination of high expectations, believing in Angelo, and those expectations being tied to more rigorous standards, really allowed Angelo to leave my 4th grade classroom above grade level in both reading and math. So you're here tonight. You're here tonight to learn more about Tennessee Succeeds. You're here tonight to be able to provide your voice, your feedback, so that we can make Tennessee's educational progress even greater, so that our students can have whatever future it is that they want. So we're really glad that you're here tonight. We're really pleased that you're going to have an opportunity to share your voice. And without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Tennessee's Commissioner of Education, Dr. Candice McQueen.
Well, it's great to be here and honored that you're here on an afternoon when you can be doing other things. We are really appreciative that you came to talk with us about a plan that we're putting forth for your feedback. We had about, just quickly, let me just share the agenda, and then I'm going to talk about why we're here, what has happened in our state over the last decade, and what we're trying to do in the next decade. Quickly, though, I want to share, I'm going to walk through several pieces around our plan, how it connects to ESSA and Every Student Succeeds Act. We're going to specifically talk about something new that is a requirement under ESSA called school accountability. We've had district accountability. We'll now have a school accountability model. And we're going to walk through those indicators with you, and Dr. Towns will walk through how we came to those indicators, what our guiding principles have been, and what we believe that means for us as a state. Then we will have an opportunity after those large group discussions to break out into small groups where you're going to then give us feedback on what we've heard. Specifically, we will have small group sessions that will just be a general feedback. Anything you want to talk about, give us feedback on. Questions that you might want to ask about what you've heard. We also have a specific session that will be around school improvement. We're going to dig in more on our planning around school improvement. And then the last is if you want to know more and give some feedback specifically on school accountability, we'll have a feedback room for that. So this large group is to give you some high-level information, talk about school accountability as a group, and then you will have these opportunities in these 3 small groups. I will be in one of the rooms, and several of our senior leadership members will be in some of the rooms as well. So with that as an overview for the evening, I do want to jump into something called Tennessee Succeeds, and I appreciate Karen mentioning this in her comments. Tennessee Succeeds is just that. It's a plan that hopefully will help Tennessee succeed. We rolled this out about 15 months ago, particularly with our directors of schools, and we've continued to use Tennessee Succeeds to really map out specific results that we believe are possible in our state, along with the work that we would be doing in the State Department, as well as in our partnership with districts to ensure that we meet some rigorous goals. Now, I say that to say this is the vision that was articulated, it's the vision we put together to actually align to and match to Tennessee Succeeds. Here's the vision, it's pretty simple. We know as a State Department of Education, we cannot possibly impact or change 1 million kids by ourselves. We can't do that. But we can have a theory of action that if we work through districts and schools to ensure that all students have the knowledge and skills to ultimately reach that excellence, that we can put students on pathways for choice past high school. And you're going to notice at the end of this vision sure they go to a four-year university just like the one home did. We didn't say we're going to set up every student to make sure they go to a community college. We said choice. And that means post-secondary choices, where they have options. They can utilize Tennessee Promise and they can seamlessly move into a post-secondary environment. It also means that they can go seamlessly into the workplace and potentially have early credentials that would help them get a job when they graduate. We know that the majority of our new jobs in Tennessee are requiring some type of post-secondary education. Our fastest growing industries in Tennessee are requiring something past high school, a credential, a diploma, a degree. And so when we talk about choice, we don't want the high school diploma to limit your options. We want it to give you options because of what that high school diploma means. It means that you had a rigorous set of coursework that you completed. It means that you can go into college without having to take a developmental or remedial course. It means that you've been set up with some type of industry credential or early post-secondary opportunity or workplace learning where you now have a pathway toward a career. This is important in terms of how we then set up NESA to align to this vision. And so keep this vision in mind as we walk through this plan. We also set forth 4 big goals. Karen, you actually mentioned we've been the fastest improving state in the nation on NAEP. Our goal is to not just be the fastest improving. It's to actually be in the top 25 states. We have been sitting historically at about 46 and 47 out of 50 states. And I got to tell you, that's not where Tennessee deserves to be with the growth that I know that we're having and have had for a decade now. And you can see we're starting to move. We have had a remarkable last few years where of six subject areas / grade levels that we test on math, science, and reading in 4th and 8th grade. We now have 3 of those areas in the top 25. We're number 25 in 4th grade math, and we moved to 19 and 21 in science in our 4th and 8th grades. So we're making moves that are putting us on a track for success. And at the end of the day, this is saying to, quite frankly, jobs across Tennessee, across the country, that we have an educated workforce in Tennessee, and we want you to bring your jobs and your industry here so that we can continue to have that growth. We also set forth a goal that was really an additional goal after we had 1, 3, and 4. And that's to say, if we are going to ever meet the goals that we have as a state, we have to have more of our students reading on grade level early. I actually think this is a predictor of success in 1, 3, and 4. We've had a challenge in reading. Now, I will say that I've just looked into your Shelby County data, and you had a 5 in literacy in terms of growth. We're showing some growth there with our high school UOCs, but we've got to keep on that pathway. We have strong literacy instruction, not just in high schools, but right all the way through the spectrum that we have in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, pre-K, even before they get to school. What's happening to make sure they're on this pathway to success? Right now, we're at 43% of our students have been measuring proficient on 3rd grade reading according to our state test. According to NAEP, it's 33% proficiency in 4th grade. That's because we still have this gap on the rigor in our state test that we're trying to close. And that's what T and Ready has been about. Let's make sure that reality in Tennessee is really what they see when they take a national test. So we have a 75% goal by 2025. And by the way, that's a minimal 75%. We hope it's more. We've said, what's the pathway based on where we are that would move us to have more of our students reading on grade level? Here's the reality. If students aren't reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade, they rarely catch up at 8th. They rarely catch up in high school. Some do, but it's harder. And then they are 4 times less likely to graduate from high school if there is a lowest achievement level in reading at 3rd grade. So this is a challenge that we have to take seriously, and we have to work together with our districts to meet this goal. 3, we want our students to show on a national benchmark test that they have the ability to seamlessly go into a post-secondary environment without taking a remedial development course. And to do that, a 21 on the ACT gives us a benchmark that is aligned to the work that we're doing in the state around T and Ready. Where are we now? Well, we've been more students taking the ACT. We had 3,000 more students take it last year. We had 19.4. We were asked by our districts to actually look at the best of score as opposed to just the last score of the students. So we've looked at that data, and we are at a 19.9 total if you look at the best score the student made, and that's students' times that they took the ACT. So we're marching forward, still not where we need to be on this goal. And then number 4, maybe the most important one besides the reading, quite frankly. The majority of our students need to go into some post-secondary environment that matches them to these career pathways. They don't just need to go, they need to complete. And what we're seeing is we have more students than ever, because of Tennessee Promise, going into college. The reality check would be, can they complete? Can they get that certification, diploma, or degree that actually allows them to go successfully to the career field and be successful? I quite frankly think we've been made to work. How we're built. We like work. We like to actually work and be successful. And so the pathways to make sure students are set up for work that's meaningful, work that's actually allowing them to support themselves and their families and their communities, is the type of work we want to be working into. And having post-secondary credentials matches now to the types of jobs that will do that inside our state. I want to say something about 4 because I think it's important as you think about the connection to what we do when we bring in jobs. The governor has said many times when they are trying to recruit new businesses to Tennessee, whether that's the west, middle, or east, he assumed when he was a new governor that the very first question folks would ask would be, what are your tax incentives in Tennessee for us to move here? He said that is never the first question. They're always interested in, do you have an educated workforce? So guess what the questions are that they ask them? They ask them questions about, do you have schools that have IB programs, early post-secondary options so kids are prepared for college? Are you matching students along career and technical education pathways to the jobs that exist if this industry comes in? Do students have early industry credentials? Are you offering the types of rigor in terms of your high school graduation requirements that's going to allow us to hire kids that have critical thinking, problem solving, flexible thinking, right? The social skills and the academic skill set, particularly in terms of writing, where they can do the jobs that exist in our state. So let me go on, and I think I'm probably pointing this at the wrong thing. Anybody know where I'm supposed to point it?
All the way back
All the way back. Where, this way?
to the clock.
Perfect. Now how many times did I get this? Okay, right. This is perfect. Now I know I've got to point it to you in the back. So after we mapped out these 4 goals, we also mapped out 5 priorities under Tennessee Succeeds that we believe help us move toward these goals. And we're going to spend some time on this within the opportunity, so I'm not going to walk through all 5 of these. But when you see our draft as the plan that will be out at the beginning of next week, we want you to look at the embedded nature of these 5 priorities throughout the entire plan. We've built our work around early foundations of literacy, high school, that high school experience in the bridge to post-secondary. That all means all. All students need to be on a successful pathway, wherever they start. We've got to make sure all students are moving forward. Educator support, ensuring that our educators have what they need to work with all students. And then finally, that we've got to empower districts to do this work. This is work that will only be accomplished if we're working in partnerships towards goals that we've set. So let me talk about the updates on our ESSA planning process. Ultimately, we have a goal to ensure that what we've just shared at a high level around Tennessee Succeeds matches what we have as a plan under the Every Student Succeeds Act. For information in this room, that means Every Student Succeeds is essentially the new version of No Child Left Behind. It's a new federal act that we've got to comply with, but it also allows an opportunity that's much less than compliance. Right? This is an opportunity that doesn't say just check the box and say you did it, but it's about creating a statewide pathway to get to those goals and to create some flexibilities in your funding, create some flexibilities in your requirements to get there. This is where we've been in our ESSA planning phase. We started in May to kick off a stakeholder engagement We had multiple months where we were receiving input from about 2,500 individuals and or organizations to say, what would you do under these different components of ESSA? How would you approach this work? And what we're going to share with you is what we heard. What did we hear and what have we tried to put in a draft from what we heard, what we know from our own data and research in the state, and what we believe matches well to the Tennessee Succeeds work. We wrote the plan, and you're going to see that in about 300 pages when it's posted next week for public comment, and we will have that posted through the end of January for you to continue to give us feedback and comment. We're in the stakeholder feedback phase where we're going out into our communities, sharing the information and what we believe are usable forms and pockets of the state. We're going to be in Chattanooga and East Tennessee as well in January. And then we hope to have more stakeholder feedback based on your comments on the plan through the public comment period. We will ultimately have a plan that we believe can be submitted by April of this coming year after it's gone through that entire process. And so you will see iterations of that plan, as will our other stakeholder groups, the General Assembly, the Governor's Office, the State Board of Education. They will also be involved in that. Let me go back, just talked about next steps. I want to walk through some opportunities before we get to school accountability. So what we heard over and over again from these 2,500 stakeholders that we talked to, we had these conversations with, is that we don't want you to change gears from what you're doing under Tennessee Succeeds. That is a plan that is rigorous, it's matched to expectations that we have for ourselves in the state. We want us to look for, they want us to look for opportunities that existed within ESSA and within our plan to actually take it further in a more intensive way, but also to see what flexibilities would exist for additional supports. And so that's what we've done. And we believe these 5 opportunities exist within the feedback that we've received, as well as what we've been able to write into our plan with that feedback. So I'm going to walk through each one of these opportunities. First, we heard over and over again that that post-secondary expectation is a powerful expectation. High expectations and then matching it to work that helps students meet those high expectations will help us change the pathway and the life trajectory for a student. So keeping those high expectations through our standards and through alignment of those standards in our classrooms, and ensuring that we are helping students with the workforce readiness as well, and not separating the academic from also being workforce ready. You're going to see that over and over again in our plan. We had a task force that met over several months called Career Forward. And we really tried to map out recommendations to make sure students are ready for the career and not just separate the career from what a post-secondary environment would provide. Some things that we are actually putting in our plan is a continuation of the academic standards work that we've done. Making sure we have a process that produces Tennessee-specific standards that are of the rigor and expectation of our teachers, of our folks that are employers, what our post-secondary environments require, and also what we know from our own pathway in Tennessee has worked. At the same time, we're going to continue to improve and align our assessments to those standards. Last year, we had a challenging year with TN Ready, and every time I get an opportunity to say, we're sorry, I want to say it. We had a challenging year. And we're sorry that that year did not go as planned. We were not able to fully deliver the grades 3A test. We were able to deliver the high school test, and we're on a pathway of continued improvement through the TN Ready process. We have a very strong partner we're working with. We have a very strong test that will be coming out. And the work that we're doing is to continue to improve that. We've reduced testing time by 30% from last year to this year. We've changed our test window construct to make it more manageable on the ground. We've changed some of the administration pieces that were new. You said, teacher said, Karen was one of them. She was on our teams that really looked at what are the burdens that we can continue to improve upon. And you're going to see in the ESSA plan a continued look at improving and testing time. We're looking specifically at 3rd and 4th grade and some reduction in time in science and social studies to ensure that we continue to make the best use of our instructional time. Even though right now, state testing, about 1% of time is spent on state tests. So So we want to make sure whatever that 1% on state test is being used for, that it's used for the maximum amount of feedback and information for families and students. At the same time, we've got to provide you with these new reports, better information. New information that you can use as a family so you can say, when I get a student report, I know what to do next. And not a report that tells you numbers that are indecipherable from what do I do with this information. And then finally, we have provided an ACT retake opportunity that we want to continue with, as well as continued opportunities for ACT prep that we can provide. Opportunity 2 is meeting the needs of all students. This is about making sure from the federal definition, and federally, they define historically underserved groups that we have to stay focused on and absolutely should stay focused on as a state. So how are we going to make sure our students are all progressing and we don't focus on one group of students at the expense of others, or not know that all of our students aren't progressing at the same level? So under essay, you're going to see some intentionality around focusing on the whole child. There are opportunities and flexibilities that we believe ESSA really aligns to, that allows us to say, you know what, if academics are going to be successful, if we're going to improve in math and reading, then you have to think about these supports for the students. For 7, 8 different focus groups that I've now been in with students over the past few months, students tell me over and over and over again 2 things. One, they tell me extracurricular activities, after-school programs, before-school programs, work that I'm doing through the arts, clubs that I'm in, that's actually engaging and gets me excited about school. And it helps me do better academically because I'm engaged. That's important for us to continue to think about. And some flexibilities with funding that you can think through at the local level should help support this whole school, whole child environment. To ensure you're thinking about the full school day, before school, after school, and what happens within the school day to support academics and the components that will help you get through the academics faster and maybe move it further. The other piece of this that's important is in our accountability framework, we're putting in new metrics that are metrics that actually have a meaning that's not just test-driven. These are metrics that are giving us an indication of, is that student getting the full opportunity to learn, and is that student already graduate? And Dr. Towns is going to talk through both of those in just a minute under school accountability. Opportunity 3 is about providing support, funding, intervention, innovation for our lowest performing schools. We heard this over and over again, and ESSA provides opportunities to really think about how are we supporting our lowest performing schools. And it gives us a chance to rethink that, as well as take what worked best and keep doing that. We are still required to identify our lowest performing 5% schools. You know those schools in Tennessee as priority schools. We will continue to make that identification every 3 years. Our role as a state is to make sure all of those priority schools are getting some type of support. In our school improvement breakout session, we'll talk more about the pieces of that continuum, but let me go ahead and share a couple things in this large group. We have a most rigorous state intervention in Tennessee. It's called the Achievement School District. And you know that well here because you have schools that are in the Achievement School District. What we will be doing under the ESSA plan is that we will still have the Achievement School District as our most rigorous intervention. But we will also be building in some components that if you are new to the priority school list, when you've never been on it before, new school, that we want to allow some flexibility at the district level for the district to really lead some work before there would be any eligibility for a statewide intervention. That will also be part of a continuum of schools. When you're identified on the priority school list, you would be put in one of 3 tracks. You're either new to the priority school list, or you've been on the priority school list, but you're showing some improvement based on your growth data. Or you haven't shown improvement, and you've been getting some kind of intervention. You've had some funding, but you're not showing that improvement. And based on those 3 tracks, you will have different opportunities. And that top track that I just mentioned, where you've been on the priority school list, you've had some intervention, maybe you had funding and you still haven't shown improvement, that's the group where they would be eligible for ASD intervention. The other two groups, there would be some intentionality and partnership with the district to create district-led plans first. And so that's a new part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. We'll also be clarifying expectations for exit out of the Achievement School District. The Achievement School District was originally intended and is intended to build capacity and make sure students are on a positive life trajectory. They're moving forward and they're growing. And then the intent is as those schools have improved, they go back into the district and they're set up for success, not only through the district environment that's been created, but also by what has been the success points in that school. So our goal is to ultimately transition schools back into the district with greater capacity for greater success. Because what you don't want to happen is for lots of students to move back in a school, and that school in 3 years be back on the problem schools. This is about building capacity, improving, strengthening over time, but ultimately it's about moving back into your district for that success. And then finally, I would say one other item on this is just some clarifications around the entire process. And that's ultimately part of the ESSA plan as well. What do different pieces mean for entry and exit? And clarifications of who's eligible and who's not. And you'll see that as part of the work. Opportunity 4 is focusing on our educators, supporting and strengthening the folks that are doing the work on the ground with our students every day, and are the biggest reason why, in an in-school factor, why our students are successful or not. We're looking specifically at educator preparation. What are the pipelines that are moving into our schools, particularly our highest need schools? Do we have pathways in terms of pipelines for principals and for educators that are best preparing our students that are highest need? At the same time, enhance data and feedback for you around our human capital reports, which we already provide, but we believe we can even do those better, where you can make decisions from a staffing perspective or where are our highest need areas for us to think about different pipelines of teachers and support for teachers. And then finally, improving professional development overall and using our funds to think about the specific needs of individual teachers or groups of teachers, and you'll see that in our plan. And then opportunity 5 is empowering districts. You heard a bit about that already as I talked about what we will be doing with our school improvement components, empowering districts to do the work within their local communities, but also providing opportunities with the state to do that work, as well as having interventions if necessary. But first, really empowering our districts to do the work themselves on that front. We have a very specific piece in our plan that is about spurring innovation. We spend a lot of time working on our weaknesses. That's critical because we've got to keep our students on track. But we also need to focus on our strengths and how do we do what we are doing okay or well even better so we can spur innovation and make sure we're not going to be behind 20 years in what we do in education. Right? We need to be thinking differently as a state on what can we do better that would innovate on work that we're doing well, but could have a much stronger approach. We're going to approach this as competitive work built on strengths, meaning districts apply for these funds to actually say, what are you strong and what are you doing well that you could take to another level, and then we learn from that work. We pilot this work, and we try to think differently. We are doing 4 pilots in the state on some very innovative work this coming year that came out of our personalized learning task force, and trying to use our funds to get better, not just stay the same, but how do we do this differently to get better? Those pilots will be in personalized learning, competency-based education, micro-credentialing for teachers, as well as looking around how do we specifically use our technology to help us better make predictions about where students will be next, and use our technology for that predictive analytics. So with that, that is a high-level overview of a 300-page document. If we were here 4 or 5 more hours, I could have gone into every page, but we want you to look at the link that will be posted, and we'll share And then there will be a link to a feedback form. So we want you to also address any comments you have in that feedback form. But this is an area that is new for us in the state, completely new. We've had school report cards and we've had district accountability, but now we're going to have something called school accountability. And this particular school accountability piece is required under ESSA. I want you to even see the wording under ESSA. It is that you meaningfully differentiate schools annually. So annually you're saying in a meaningful way what's different about your schools. That's the required wording. At the same time, the state legislature in Tennessee passed an A through F law where we would have to assign an A through F grade based on criteria to each school every year. So as we have looked at school accountability under ESSA, we have layered on top of it what would also be the state law that would be enacted as well. This would come into effect in 17-18, school year 17-18. The first school accountability A through F framework you would actually see in late 18, right? Late summer, early fall 18. And so that's the first time this would be used. We have some guiding principles that really helped us think about our A through F, and then Dr. Towns will walk through all the indicators. As we put together our school accountability principles, we wanted to make sure there was clarity in our communities around what does an A mean, what does a B mean, what does a C mean, and so on. And how would we want to set up our A through F grading system, our school accountability model, that would be different than maybe how other states have approached it. So I don't want you to think of Tennessee as just like how every other state has approached this work, because it's not. These are the principles we built our framework on. Number one, we felt like it was important that all schools have the ability to make an A. Meaning that automatically, just because you are from a particular impoverished background, you would never be able to make an A, because we know that economic disadvantage status is sometimes equated to overall achievement. So poverty is not destiny. So if you're making growth and significant growth, you should have the ability to get an A, particularly if it's growth that is actually changing that child's life trajectory, which you'll see as another guiding principle. Also, all means all. Each indicator should actually be an indicator where you could see this for all students, but you should also see that same indicator for each of the student groups that have historically been underserved. All growth should be rewarded. You're going to see that in a moment. And then finally, reporting should be transparent, meaning that we are providing specificity of that full grade. So if you see an A, what does that mean? You should be able to click on it and see what did that look like underneath on each of those indicators. And so that was part of this reporting process and guiding principles we set. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Towns, who will take a short period of time to walk through the indicators and show you what a school accountability heat map, if you will say, dashboard would look like. So Dr. Towns, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Commissioner McQueen. So I am going to walk through these slides fairly quickly, but as Commissioner McQueen mentioned, I will be in a breakout session. I also have the Executive Director of Accountability, Mary Balawala, is here with me. So if you want to dig more deeply into this, please join us in the breakout session, but I will move fairly quickly through these slides. So what are our intended outcomes? As we thought about those guiding principles and the indicators that relate to the school accountability framework, we really think about rewarding these four elements. First of all, we're going to reward performance and progress. Those of you who know we've identified reward schools in Tennessee, we've looked at both sides of that equation, not only absolute performance, but also progress. We also want to incentivize that positive school culture. We need to engage students to attend and do the work and be motivated, as our Teacher of the Year, Karen, was talking about. That's part of the work that we do, so creating that positive school culture. We want to emphasize that readiness for post-secondary and workforce. And why are we emphasizing that? Because it's not just about K-12, it's what happens to our students after they leave us in the 12th grade. And so we are focused on trying to improve those life outcomes for students. We want to improve those trajectories so that students are able to make their own choices and pursue the careers that they want and be able to support themselves and their families. So those are our outcomes. How are we going to get there? we're going to look at 4 overarching metrics in the accountability framework. So the first of those, very familiar, student achievement. We'll talk about what that looks like, the student achievement indicator in detail. Student growth, you've already heard mentioned, we're at a school, Douglas, that has tremendous student growth. We want to look at English learner progress on English proficiency. That's new, we'll talk about that. And then finally, we have these additional indicators of school quality and student success. So we have 2 of those indicators, and I'll walk through those in detail. One of them we call opportunity to learn, and then the second one is the ready graduate indicator. So we'll get into what does that mean. So student achievement. When we think about achievement, we're going to be looking at that under 2 different pathways for schools to demonstrate potentially earning an A in the achievement indicator. So the first pathway is the one that we commonly refer to, and that's what we would talk about as absolute proficiency. So these are the percentage of students who have met the standards, that benchmark, to be historically we called it proficient or advanced, but under our new T and Ready assessments, we now refer to that as on track or mastered. So this is the percent of students who are meeting on track or mastered. So for example, when we look at that in our baseline year, we would look at all of our schools, and those schools who are in the top 20% of absolute proficiency could earn an A in achievement. Now we also have a second pathway, because as the commissioner mentioned, we know that absolute proficiency has a high correlation to economic status. Economically disadvantaged students typically have lower achievement. So we also want to make sure with our guiding principle that we give the opportunity for some lower achieving schools to still be able to earn that A in achievement. So how will we do that? The second pathway is the annual measurable objective, AMOs. If you work in education, you've heard this term over the last several years. And what we do is we set targets. We set goals for improvement in achievement each year. And so historically, the way that we've looked at that is we said the goal is that in 4 years, the goal is that over 8 years, can you reduce by 50% the percentage of students who are not on track or master. So reducing in 8 years by 50%, cutting it in half in 8 years, the number of students who are not on track or master. We have determined that in this AMO pathway, you could potentially earn an A as a school by doubling your target. So that means hitting 200% of your AMO target. And what does that look like? That means that that's a school that is cutting in half in 4 years the percentage of students who are not proficient. So that's remarkable. Anyone who works in K-12 knows that a 4-year trajectory of cutting in half the percentage of students who are not proficient is something that's achievable, it's possible, it's happened. We looked at the data for 2014-15 and we saw that about 11% of our schools were able to do that, but 11% means it's not easy to do, but it's possible to do. And so that means that under this achievement indicator, we're going to have the full range of schools in terms of their socioeconomic demographics that are able to earn an A in achievement. So that's the achievement indicator. Growth. So that's something that we mentioned. In our state, we have the Tennessee Value-Added Assessment System. This is the growth model, the TVAS growth model that you hear us refer to. And this is really an individual student level growth measure. And what we're looking for is wherever that student began, can we support that student to have their expected learning growth, a year's worth of growth? So this is not about their absolute achievement. You can be a student who never meets the absolute achievement benchmark to be on track, but you're still growing. You're meeting that growth expectation. So growth is the second indicator where we make sure that we're supporting all students across the continuum in terms of those learning growth outcomes. The third indicator is English language proficiency. So we have students who are English language learners in our schools, and so for those schools who have enough of those students who meet the minimum in count, they're also going to have this indicator. And this is about students' progress towards acquiring English language proficiency. So this is not on the T and Ready English language arts assessment, but the assessment that we use in our state is called READA Access. So this is measuring, are those students actually learning English? Are they able to fluently read in English and be able to master the language? So now that's coming into the base school accountability model as opposed to being its own standalone provision. The next indicator gets into this is a new area that ESSA required, but one that I think that we were thinking about in Tennessee under Tennessee Succeeds. So we want to look at some data that may not be test data. We want to look at other indicators of progress for students. And so we thought about this concept of opportunity to learn. What do we mean by that? We know that students have the greatest opportunity to learn when they are in school with that qualified teacher of record who's engaging in effective instruction with them. So that's what we want. We want that every day for our students. And so initially, we're going to look at this particular indicator as chronic absenteeism. So when you hear us talk about chronic absenteeism, we mean the percentage of students who are missing more than 10% of school. So more than 18 days. In our department, our research area took a look at this year, and we actually have a wide variation in our schools in terms of the percentage of students who are missing more than 10% of school. And so you can imagine how devastating that is for that student learning if they're not present to receive that instruction. So with chronic absenteeism, we're going to look at both low overall rates of chronic absenteeism as well as being able to reduce rates of chronic absenteeism. So we have that opportunity to learn indicator, and in the future years, we'll look at other ways we might bring other identifiers, other metrics into this index. The next measure, I'm going to step back and do a little bit of our, you hear us with all these acronyms in education. So this acronym is important, so let me take a moment to talk about EPSOs. When you hear us use EPSOs as shorthand, what we're referring to are early post-secondary opportunities. And the puzzle pieces there represent all of the kinds of opportunities that we have in high schools. So you may be very familiar with our advanced placement programs. The Commissioner mentioned International Baccalaureate. And then we have all of these dual credit courses where students are able to take college credit in high school. All of these types of rigorous pathways for courses in high school, we know that these have a strong correlation with students being able to perform in post-secondary programs. So we looked at our Tennessee data, and we noted that for students who were taking 4 or more EPSOs, they had a 50% or better chance of earning a 21 on the ACT. So we know there's a positive correlation with taking those rigorous courses and being able to perform better on those national benchmarks. In addition, there's lots of peer-reviewed research that says that students who are in these kind of opportunities, they're going to earn better grades in college, they're going to persist and earn the degree in college. So we want to open up the doors in terms of our students' access around EPSOs. When we looked at the class of 2015, just to give you another data point, the class of 2015, we saw that only about 40% of our students even had 1 EPSO credit. And that means just participating in the class, right? Just participating in the class 1. When we looked at 4 EPSOs, it was a little less than 17% of our graduating class of 2015. So this is a place where we really want to lean into access. So how are we going to do that? We've got this concept that we're going to call the ready graduate. So you hear us talk about our graduation rates in Tennessee. We've actually got fantastic graduation rates. 88.5% is our most recent graduation rate. And most people don't realize this, but it's top 10 in the country. That's number 9 in the country. So we've definitely been able to make progress on making sure that students earn those credits towards a high school diploma. But the question is, what are they prepared to do post-high school with that high school diploma? So we want to have 3 checks for readiness. So for every graduate, we have 3 checks for readiness. And any one of these criteria, if the student meets any one of these 3 criteria, we will consider that student a ready graduate. The first check is, did that student earn a 21 or higher on the ACT? We know that's important. It's important because it qualifies them for Hope Scholarship, and it qualifies them for admission into most Tennessee universities. So did that student earn a 21 on the ACT? If not, we go to our second check. Did that student complete 4 EPSO opportunities? So any manner, any combination of advanced placement, dual credit, dual enrollment, IB, any of those various opportunities. Did the student complete 4 of those? And when we say complete, we mean went through the course and sat for the challenge exam. So if there's an AP exam, they actually had to take the AP test. For the statewide dual credit, they actually had to take the challenge exam. Doesn't mean that they had to pass it at a level to earn the credit. We're not looking at whether or not they made a 3 or higher on the AP test. We're saying, did that student complete that component, and we consider that completing the EPSOs. The third pathway is really around our career and technical education. So you hear us talk a lot about CTE concentrators, and we have these pathways and programs of study that are aligned with industries. So if a student took 2 ESO courses and earned an industry certification, we consider that already graduate. So we've got these 3 pathways that really are pushing us to start thinking about not only did you get to the diploma, but are you walking out with currency for the workforce, knowing that you're ready to move on and earn that post-secondary credential. So that's the concept of the ready graduate. So what does that all mean? When we think about the overall construct of what is an A school, we've already said that any school can earn an A, and that is uncapped, right? So there's no maximum number of A schools. Any school can earn an A overall, and it's uncapped. That A rating is going to be based on performance on each of those indicators that I just talked through, and we're going to look at the performance for all students, and you'll earn a grade for all students on those indicators, and then you'll also earn a grade for the subgroups. When we talk about subgroups in Tennessee, we have 4 major subgroups. That's the English learner subgroup, economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, and then we group Black, Hispanic, and Native American students. So we have 4 major subgroups that we're looking at. So we have an all students grade, a subgroup grade, and we combine those 2 for an overall school grade. So in qualitative terms, an A school is on average going to be a higher achieving school, or a school that's making dramatic growth in achievement, and they're demonstrating that they're growing all students and those individual subgroups. That's what it means to earn an A in the overall grading system. So now let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. And the commissioner alluded to this just a little bit when we talked about those priority schools. We had a lot of feedback over the last several months that people didn't want the A through F school accountability system to be in conflict with identifying priority schools. We didn't want to send 2 separate messages. So when we think about identifying priority schools, we're going to look at the lowest performing 5% of schools. You all know that we've talked historically about the lowest 5% in achievement. We're adding another metric to that, which is also growth. So a school, we're going to look at the lowest 5% in achievement. However, if that school has had above expectations growth, a level 4 or 5 TVAs for the last 2 years, then that would not be a priority school. So you can essentially safe harbor your way, even if you're in the lowest achieving group. If you've had high growth, you would not be named as a priority school if you've had high growth for the last 2 years. So we've got this schools that we've identified as priority schools, which are the lowest achieving schools who are not demonstrating high growth. Those schools would be identified also as the F letter grade schools. What does that mean? That means that we're capping the percentage of F schools at 5%. We're only identifying new F schools once every 3 years, but a school can earn its way out of that F grade annually. A school can exit the priority school status annually. They have to meet rigorous exit criteria, but you have the opportunity to earn your way to a higher grade annually. So that's the alignment between how we think about the A through F grading system versus the overall school accountability framework and how it ties into school turnaround, school improvement. So let's look at an example of the dashboard. So I put out these various metrics. This is a K-8 example. How would this look? We know that it's very simplified to think about a single letter grade for a school. What we want to show our communities are that there were several indicators that went in, those indicators that we talked about for K-8, achievement, growth, opportunity to learn, and if you're a school with English learners, the ELPA metric, you've got an all students grade, and you've got a subgroup grade. So first, when we think about each of the indicators, we have had a lot of feedback around how should we be weighting these. And I have to say, this is the piece of this that's the most fluid. So we're showing you a model in terms of the latest iteration, but these may not be the final weightings as we get feedback. But when we think about achievement and growth, we have people who both ways, that you should weight growth higher, you should weight achievement higher. At this point, we're weighting them equally. So for all students, you see that the achievement and growth are rated 40% each, and for the subgroups, they're rated 35% each, and that's just a little less because we pulled out 10% for ELPA. under the subgroups. And then you've got the opportunity to learn, which is 20% under all students and the subgroup grade. So you use that to come down to the individual overall all students grade and the subgroup grade. And then you look at the weighting between those. So you see here represented a 60% weighting for all students and a 40% weighting for subgroups. We had a lot of conversation about that split. And so we know that equity is very important to us in Tennessee. We had originally thought about this as a 50-50 split. But we also recognize there are places in our state that are more or less diverse. We have the full range of diversity in our state. So we also wanted to make sure that we were being fair to places where the percentage of students that they had in some of these subgroups may be a relatively small proportion of their overall student group. The way that we came to 60-40 is that that really reflects the demographics of Tennessee. So in Tennessee, about 40% of our students statewide are in a racial or ethnic group, minority subgroup. And then we also have about 35% of our students are economically disadvantaged under the new definition. So right now, we felt like we've gotten pretty good feedback that the 60-40 split makes sense when you think about the overall state policy goals, overall state demographics. And then we'll look at a high school example. And you can see here it looks very similar. The only additional metric is the ready graduate metric. We only can have the ready graduates from those high schools that actually have a graduating cohort. And you can see that again, achievement and growth are equally weighted. The ready graduate has come in at 20%, and then you've got opportunity to learn at 10%. You take each of those grades to come to the overall school grade. So this is what a dashboard might look like 2 years from now. We are 2 years away from ever being able to produce our first school accountability summative letter grade. So we've got lots of time to talk about this, talk about what it would look like, talk about the weightings as we finalize our SSA plan. So just to recap, what are some of the highlights? We want you to remember that there's an unlimited number of schools that can earn an A. Any school can earn an A. This is why this model is very different from the way other states have done this. We've ensured with the way that we look at the metrics that we're giving opportunities to reward performance and progress, which means that all types of schools will be able to earn an A. We will be limiting the number of schools that are in F grade at 5% because we're going to be aligning that with priority school identification, but note that we've added to priority school identification that schools with high growth in the most recent 2 years would not be named priority schools. We're going to be able to really focus on our challenges with equity because we're going to award grades in each indicator for the underserved subgroups. So we'll be able to really see if there are differentials between the performance of our all student groups and then these 4 subgroups that we talked about. We're also going to have multiple indicators. So we're not oversimplifying this. We're not just giving people a single letter grade and they don't know how we got there. We're going to show a dashboard, no different than when you get a report card or a transcript, you don't just get the GPA at the bottom. You get all the information about how did we get there, how did we get to that summative grade. And then we're going to recognize progress at every level. We're looking at students getting over that benchmark to on track, as well as looking at all the growth along the way. Students who are moving from below the lowest level to approaching, as well as students moving from on track to mastered. We want to see growth across the continuum, and this model is going to reward growth across the continuum. And then, of course, one of the other overarching goals that we had was to make sure that we have a system that's aligned for both ESSA and for our state law. We heard very clearly that we don't want to have 2 sets of metrics that people have to keep up with, and this model actually meets the requirements of both ESSA and our state law. So with that, Commissioner, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, we are at the end of the sit and get portion of the town hall. We now want to hear from you. And so we have some breakout sessions where we're going to hear your feedback, answer any questions that you have. Specifically, breakout room is with Dr. Towns in the library. This is going to be the accountability discussion to dig in more and give feedback specific on that area. Certainly that can be also other types of data, assessment, research type questions as well. Breakout 2 is on school improvement. Rita Fentress, is she already in the room? Okay, perfect. This is in the band room. Where is the band room? Out past the restrooms and their response. I will also be in that room, and we'll talk more about school improvement. And then breakout 3 will be in the choir room, and Eve Carney will be in that room, and that will be all just sort of general questions, concerns, feedback. Certainly we'll take those in any room, but we have targeted some specific areas that you may have interest in. We are appreciative of the high school, Douglas High School, and thank you for letting us be here, and congratulations again on the growth that you've made. And we're honored to be in your school, and honored to have you here tonight. So look forward to hearing from you in our breakout sessions, and so we'll go ahead and break for those.